my first takeaway, and the takeaway that I chose to kind of go over this week, was that the Dolphins' window of contention is not open like we thought it was coming into the season. And in fact, I think they might even need to like double down on their rebuild, because first of all, they've just been really bad this season. And I know there's like extenuating circumstances that you can mention, like they, had to play a couple games without Tua. They've played some tough opponents, but to be honest, they're not a team that's supposed to be 1-5. And I think anyone would have said that coming in the season, even if they lost Tua for a couple games, this defense, the coaching staff, the weapons, they're supposed to be better than a 1-5 team. And a lot of the blame, I feel, can fall on the offensive line, something that is really telling of a team's rebuild. Like, if you can't successfully rebuild the offensive line while you're rebuilding your team, it kind of doesn't matter. And I believe my argument, like, you could probably argue that the Dolphins offensive line has gotten worse the last couple of years, which is super surprising considering the talented players that they've tried to bring in on the offensive line. And so all of those issues added up with the fact that they just haven't been hitting on their draft picks. Like, you can compile them all you want, but unless you draft good players, players that work for your scheme, it kind of doesn't matter. And I put out a tweet responding to one of our Cold Hard Truth tweets. Go follow our Twitter down in the description as well. Saying that the Dolphins 2020 draft class is looking awful right now. Of course, there's the rumors recently that they might be trying to move off to a Tagovailoa for someone like Deshaun Watson. And we can get into that if we want. But if that's the case, I mean, you trade away Tua. Austin Jackson has looked really bad on the offensive line, which sucks because I had high hopes for him. Noah Igbenogany hasn't done anything really. He's just a non-factor. And you go down the list and it's a lot more second, third, fourth, fifth round picks that just aren't producing at all. And some that are officially just like letting down the Dolphins. And so they've done this great job, and we've applauded them for getting all these draft picks in return for their players and taking stabs at players in the draft, but it really hasn't been working out. And as much as I, had thought the Dolphins were a good team and, had a really bright future, I'm kind of dialing back on that. I'm not sure how much I can say that anymore.
I kind of feel bad for Tua Tagovailoa in the sense that the media has always just put him, in these trade rumors. So it's like every game he's basically fighting to save his job, and he's always under this pressure. He doesn't feel secure in Miami. I mean, that's basically it. But the offensive line, I agree, it's definitely gotten worse over the years. Austin Jackson was a miss, even though he was raw coming out of college. Noah Igbenogany's done absolutely nothing, as you said. I don't know. The Eagles have the Dolphins pick this year, but the Dolphins are basically relying on the Niners to be as bad as possible because they have their pick. So I guess that whole trade with Trey Lance and then moving up to 6 again, I don't know if they're winners or losers of that trade just yet. Right now, I'd kind of side with losers. It kind of depends on how Trey Lance does, but it's like Jalen Waddle is not bad. He's not bad, but I don't think he's as good as we all thought he would be in that sense. And I don't know. It's not even due to Jalen Waddle. It's just because he's not getting the ball as much as I thought he would. But I still think he can be a great deep threat for them. But overall, I do think the Dolphins need to rebuild here. And whether that means, Flores is gone, I think he's on the hot seat. I don't know. Greer could be gone, but it's really confusing situation with Miami where they may have to hit reset even though they're in the middle of a rebuild already.
Ironic because, again, we all know, or at least you guys remember how high I was on Miami last year. This year, I didn't really make a take on Miami. I didn't talk about them as much. But I didn't expect this. I don't think anyone really did.
No one did.
But obviously, I didn't think that they would be able to kind of project themselves as far up because they're just better teams in the AFC. No matter how, even if you steadfast what they were able to do, I think that was kind of the consensus around everybody. I feel like everyone thought they would kind of break into the playoffs, but they wouldn't really do much. But I mean, this is just obviously unexpected. But again, Shrikar, for example, Jalen Waddle, he does get a lot of targets. Like he got 13 third week, and then he got, I believe, 12 last week. So he does get volume, and he's
maybe I'm wrong there.
Yeah, I want to say he leads rookies in catches, actually.
Yeah. exactly. So he's been getting a lot of volume, and he also, it's been used very much in the short passing game. Like he had
In the
12
red
catches
zone.
for 58 yards one game, and then he had 9 catches for 70 and 2 touchdowns last week. So he's been used pretty good. I think he's going to be a hit. You just need Will Fuller and Devontae Parker healthy. But I'm glad we're doing like a Dolphin centric thing because, media doesn't talk about the Dolphins as a team, but you're right, Shrikar. I will say you hit on the Tua take. Because it's like, Tua's not bad. Like, again, I also defended him a lot last year. It's just the fact that there's an alternative out there that the media is spinning, right? Deshaun Watson will forever be better than Tua Tagovailoa. I don't think Tua's peak will be Deshaun Watson. So the fact that this alternative is out there, media is going to keep spinning it because the Dolphins have the assets to do it. And everyone knows that if you can upgrade for someone, a quarterback like that, 25 years old, under contract, right, in his prime, available, then everyone's going to spin it that way to say the Dolphins should get rid of Tua for him. So I think that's the whole Tua situation because Tua's not like horrendously bad. I thought he had a pretty good game against Jacksonville. But he's not gonna, again, we haven't seen anything to where he can elevate your team to win, and that's something you would expect from a top 5 pick. And then for the coaching staff, I disagree. I don't think any of them should be on the hot seat considering what Flores has been able to do so far. Sure, one bad year. I feel like, the NFL, we kind of, like move off of people too quickly sometimes. And I think Flores, if you move off of him, that would be a mistake. I think, you got to give this team some time. You're right. Igbenogany is just awful, or however you say his name. He got burnt so many times. I think he's awful, but I think for the Dolphins itself, I agree with your overall assessment, Jack. We didn't expect this, but I don't think they should kind of stunt what they're doing. I think they should keep at it. Like, they've got potential to, win games down the road. And with these picks, just continue what you're like. There's nothing they should really steadfast or kind of keep short. With the whole Deshaun Watson trade, the NFL hasn't suspended Watson. I'm not going to go into that. I actually did some research on when I found out the whole 3-team trade, like what the NFL is doing. But I think, again, that's such a touchy subject that I just don't know the full answers to. But if you get Deshaun Watson, right, like it'll steadfast your rebuild. And I think they have the pieces to where, they could be a, contender in the AFC, because think about it. You're going to have to deal with Josh Allen for a decade, right? And I don't want to go too fast, but you're going to have to deal with Josh Allen. Mac Jones has a high ceiling. So you want to have all the competition you can get. We don't know what Zach Wilson can be, right? With all this young talent around the AFC East, you want to have someone that can compete with that. So I would say, for example, Deshaun Watson, go after him. But in terms of a rebuild, I'd say, they've kind of been in one, and I think they should just keep going.
Yeah, I don't think I'd argue that they should hit the reset button. But I think coming into the year, if you asked 100 people, at least like 90% would say that the Dolphins are contenders. And we thought that their window was just opening. And I think what I'm kind of saying is, with what we've seen this year, what we've seen from Tua so far early in his career, I don't know if there's a contender window with Tua behind at the quarterback position. And I think that their window is definitely not open yet. And you could argue probably not going to open for another couple of years. And even if you get to Deshaun Watson, of course, elephant in the room, all the allegations around him, we don't know what's going to happen with that. But say it all gets wiped out. He's playing, and the Dolphins trade for him. Is he really inheriting that great of a situation? Like, are the Dolphins even a quarterback away? I don't quite know about that. I mean, he's inheriting
with that O-line. I don't think
that's what I'm saying. Like, he's inheriting. Remember how bad his offensive line was in Houston? He's inheriting a worse offensive line in Miami. He's throwing the ball to Will Fuller, who he previously played with, of course. But there's no DeAndre Hopkins there. Like, of course, we think Jalen Waddle has the ceiling of one of those top wide receivers, but I'm saying, is it that much different than this Houston team he played with last year?
I would say yes.
Successful?
I think it is much better because I think you got a stable coaching staff, right? That at least the ownership has invested in. There hasn't been these whole lot of talks of Flores being on the hot seat, right? So, and he's been there, 2 years now? I think
thus far, I mean, they're 1-5 right now.
But I think you cannot give up after a 10-6 season. And there are these dry bumps in the road. We've seen it with Minnesota all the time. They'll have a good year and then they'll kind of hit this dry spell. I think this is just kind of one of those things. And I think for Deshaun Watson, you would be inheriting a much better team. I think the defense is much better. I like the receiving core a lot. I like Parker, I like Will Fuller, and I like Jalen Waddle. I like all three. I like Gesicki. Smythe is also really good. That offensive line needs a lot of help. But with assets, right? you still have draft capital. The thing is, Watson's value is steadily decreasing, and the Texans know this is. I saw a comp. It was actually like the James Harden trade. Like the Rockets had to get rid of him. You're going to get stunted. You're going to kind of get the short end of the stick, but you got to trade him. You got to get something for him, right? And, for a guy who's going to be under contract for the next 3 years, right? On 35 mil for a quarterback of his caliber, that's actually not that bad. You've got some assets to go get an offensive line. I think this team would be better.
I mean, if those assets, first of all, I don't think the Texans need to trade Deshaun Watson, especially if the Dolphins are thinking about trading for Watson because they believe he can play sooner rather than later, then the Texans don't have to trade him.
But the thing,
I'd say
they kind of do, because if Watson's not going to play for him, the cap hit hits 35 mil next year.
Exactly.
The Texans would not want to do that.
But we don't know if Deshaun Watson is not going to play. We haven't really seen comments out of him in forever.
If you pass on a
but the thing, he wants to play. He's signed off on Miami. He has signed off. So he hasn't signed off on Philly. That's why it was Philly sent in a lawyer to check out the whole allegations. They wanted him bad. Watson said no, and that's why it fell through. Watson has said yes to Miami, so a deal could get done. If you pass on a trade deadline deal too in the offseason, who knows what his value is going to be exactly.
Like. It's too much of a risk.
If I'm Houston, I think about it real hard, because I don't want that cap hit, especially with the rebuild I got going on right now. I don't want to take 35 mil, right? Because he's still under his contract. Remember, his extension kicks in next year. So if I'm Miami, right, again, you're getting a quarterback like this for 35, and I know 35 is a lot, but compared to guys who are like Lamar's probably going to get up north of 45. So you're getting a guy of that caliber for only 35. I'd really think about it. This is a once in a lifetime type of, player that is available at this time in his career. And again, I think it's a better situation, but in terms of a Dolphins perspective and what Jack was saying, I do agree with you. I think the window needs a little bit more time to open than we thought.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to focus on Deshaun Watson as a whole. I think just overall coming out of this, it's just the Dolphins, they've definitely taken a step back. Their rebuild has hit a large roadblock, and I think it'll probably set them back 1 or 2 years at the least. And just with this whole Tua situation, if they do have to move on from Tua and they don't have a guy like Wilson, Rodgers, or Watson, you might think about the reset button, because other than that, you've got Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, who aren't exactly the youngest great pieces. Jalen Waddle, you hope can be, what you drafted him to be. But other than that, they've missed on a lot of their draft picks.
Agreed.
And so
they have. Agreed.
They're not in, I think, overall, they're not in as good of a spot as we thought coming into the season at the end of last year and all that. So I think the Dolphins, maybe like Anish, you're saying, don't panic too much. But if it keeps going the way it is, you might have to think about it.